lies dead once more, perhaps even for good. Dallas, badly weakened,
The future of all that is depends on you, and you alone.
We stand once more on the cusp of divinity. But this cup, so all my life has been a lead-up to this. To be the King of Kings. I will not say it was in vain, but if I were to chance upon my throne right now, I would sit down beside it, cast my glance to... I'd think of Sadher. I'd think of my children, their joyous dance through fire. And of course, I'd think of you, of the adventures we had, of our unlikely, yet heartfelt... Yes, I'd sit there, thoroughly contented. I know.
a mischievous smile.
But I do have to add, likewise.
So here we are. Nobody I'd rather see this whole thing through with. I trust you. I trust your judgment. I know you will. I know you. You're the best damn friend I've ever had. Well then, let's...
You think back on your journey here. On all you think of the Magisters, and the sorcerers they hunted, and of the good and the evil. You think of how the Eternals came as Voidwoken to reclaim. You look at the source around you. You think of what you could do with such power. You marvel at your journey and how it has changed you. You think of those you left behind, and of those you met along the way, who stood by you. Oh, it's time to choose your fate. Shall you be divine? You think back on your journey here. On all you think of the Magisters, and the sorcerers they hunted. And you think of how the Eternals came as... You look at the source around you. You think of what you could do with such... You marvel at your journey and how it has changed you. You think of those you left behind. It's time to choose your fate. Shall you be divine? After all that you have been through, and all that you have done, all that you have become, the Aetheran lies in front of you, or to sacrifice. What you do next decides your own fate and the future of the world. What shall you do with divinity?
And so it ended. A tale that began with my own ill-fated attempt to rid the world of the Godwoken. Dallas the Hammer, the secret Eternal, purged the Godwoken and used the Source to close the veil to the void. The world was saved. Statues in memory of the Godwoken who sacrificed their Source were erected all across Rivellon. They would never be forgotten. The half-demon Malady took pity on the soulless, Godwoken silent monks and brought them to the Hall of Echoes. There, from the scraps of their souls that remained, she restored them to life. Sorcerers no more, they lived out the rest of their lives, freed of the burden of being the Godwoken, freed from the weight of the world. As for me, the Godwoken sacrifice severed the link that bound the Sworn to the God King, and I was finally free. To atone for my sins, I spent the rest of my days taking care of the sick and elderly, telling the story of the Godwoken, that the world may never forget the greatest heroes Rivellon had ever seen.
Malady stands tall and proud, sunlight sparkling off her mouth.
Ah, there you are. More than a silent monstrosity, less than a god. In the end, I'm not totally convinced it was worth my while to restore your consciousness, seeing what you've done with it so far. Where did I go wrong? Ugh. I'd been counting on sacrificing my health and happiness for a future god, you know, not a silent monk in waiting. Never mind. I'll find another way.
She fingers the mask, covering her face. For a moment, it seems as though she's about to remove it. But instead, she places a hand on your shoulder.
We've come a long way together. I did my best by you all the way. Sacrificed much. And I'd have given even more to see you fulfill your destiny.
She looks you up and down.
I guess this will have to do. Take a moment, why don't you? Relax. Enjoy. I certainly plan to do the same. The same way I do everything, of course. Demonic gun. Oh, I don't know. Around and about. Treat myself to some mead, a lover or 300. Perhaps our paths will cross again until we find out.
The flaming hatchling bounces and cheeps out. Daddy! Daddy! Looky! Looky! It takes you a moment to realize the egg you've been carrying has hatched at long last. The chick trills contentedly.
Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. A silent monk. At least that's what you'd be if it weren't for Malady. She's Malady, the one and only. She is greater, I dare say, than we'd... Like I would about the return of the codpiece. That it's highly unfashionable. The man's a... man. All too prone to the weaknesses of the heart. We've seen the results of his errors firsthand. I give it a week before he errs anew. Yes, well, that's to say, that's love, not... All right, you made it point. Besides, Lucian. Perhaps even a god deserves a second chance. Even if he is... As for myself, I'm counting on a second chance as well. Why, I mean my empire, of course. I intend to go home as soon as I can. After all, I've dragons to raise. I need to teach them to be good boys and girls before they set the entire world on fire. There may be an accident or two along the way. Can't be helped, I'm afraid. I do so long to see my palace again. The Forbidden City. The sense of spices and incense. The sound of sitars in far-off rooms. To sit all day in perfumed shade and watch the white of the marble. But above all, I long to be with Sadher. Long to finally have the time to love. Oh, but before you go, remember how when we first met, I took you by the jaw to inspect your teeth? Not something one forgets in a hurry. Now, if you'll recall, despite lacking a sense of fashion, as per your own testimony, you can cook and brew. At the time, of course, I couldn't have foreseen the adventure ahead, but now that it's quite over, I'd like to renew the opportunity for you to become my slave. What say you? But where are you going? Really? It's the lack of manners that I find so unforgivably...
No more swords, no more powers. Don't worry, darling. I know you have plenty of other qualities. Reform my ways. How adorable. No.
Her eyes flick down to your mouth. She smiles coyly, then slinks forward. Almira pouts in disappointment, but it quickly...
Oh, no matter. We'll always have our first kiss. I haven't been quite able to put it out of my mind. Just as I'm sure. Who knows? A nice cottage someplace quiet for Mahalia and I. But a girl needs some fun.
purging that once silenced you remains on your mind as you approach Gareth. You are grateful for Malady's miraculous touch. Without it, there would be no you.
Amazing I'm still here. That you're here. And that you might still speak. That Lucian... I only did what I was meant to do. I don't deserve thanks. I gave only the bare minimum.
Gareth shakes his head vigorously in response to his own.
Self-pity is as dangerous as any man I have battled, Alexander included. In this new world, this world without the seven gods, it's a foe I plan to I find a way to fit. I wasn't just content to lurk in Lucian's shadow. I was his shadow. So I find out. My goal is to have a goal, if that makes...
Ah, the betrayer.
Ifan folds his arms and steps back from you, as if your presence...
I suppose this is proof I've got really bad taste in... After all that we've been through since Fort Joy, after all that, to end up with Lucian once more.
He fixes you with a steely gaze, eyes burnished and shining like pebbles of hatred.
It was absolutely not. You listened to Lucian. You obeyed Lucian. After everything he did, you allowed him to take our source. I intend to spend the remainder of my days seeking to undo what you have done. It may not be possible, but when did that ever stop me before?
Ifan pauses, as if about to say something else, then shakes his head.
It gives me almost as much pleasure to speak to you as it does to be whole again. I will always be an ally to those that carry swords, to those whose blood is of the heroes of old. And so, as always, I am at the ready.
You look out to the endless beyond. The sun's light plays upon the waves, just as it always did. The sails flutter in the wind, and with a start, you realize where you must go next. You speak the command to the Lady Vengeance, and another chapter. At last, the world was at peace. As the races united behind Lucian, Arx remained the center of power. The ancient Lizard Empire opened its gates. The houses disbanded, and the Empire adopted a pluralist quasi-democracy. Anyone could vote for whoever they pleased, as long as the House of Shadows approved. Justinia returns to her throne. Under her rule, the Dwarven kingdom prospered, until 2 years later, a jealous lover stabbed her in the heart with a mutton fork. Lucian made amends to the elves. He gave them lands and vast riches from the coffers of the old divine order. But the elves never forgave him. They would not trust humans again. And in a dark forest on the far side of a desert, well beyond the high seas, the Black Ring came together once more. The island of Fort Joy, the old redoubt of the Source King Brachus Rex, was turned over to the people of Driftwood to use as they wished. They turned it into a holiday resort. Reaper's Coast prospered. The fisheries returned, and the fertile farmlands produced the greatest harvests the surviving farmers had ever seen. Blood Moon Island became particularly fecund, its soil producing the greatest crops. A particularly crimson-fleshed orange grown on the island became a delicacy across half the world. The black pits took fire. The oil there burns still. Driftwood became a centre of industry, trade, and transport. Lohar the dwarf became mayor. His time in office was cut short by an unfortunate wound that spontaneously appeared on his neck. Lagan left his over-demanding wife and began a relationship with a local bard. In the spirit of loving generosity, he returned the ring to his now ex-wife. In a fit of rage, she threw it into the sea. You would never forget Dorothea's kiss. Dorothea herself left Driftwood for the ancient empire, ever in search of the perfect kiss. She never found it, although once or twice she came close. The nameless isle had vanished. Although only open water remained, by instinct ships would steer clear. None of the captains could articulate why. Arx became a great metropolis, famed for its prosperity, its culture, its diversity, and the willingness of its denizens to stab each other in the back for the slightest advantage. Sir Gareth thanked the surviving Seekers for their service and gave them their freedom. Disillusioned with peace, he set out alone to find a new purpose. He would never stop seeking. Young Han went into the theatre and became one of the realm's most popular actors. With no new divine, Malady found herself in a predicament. She had an important problem to solve, but no ally strong enough to call upon, and so her search continued. Ahu the wizard became one of Lucien's most trusted advisors once more. He always knew that something had changed in the divine. He never discovered what that was, or if he did, he never said a word. With Amadia silent, the priestess Gratiana left the swamps and re-entered the world. She founded an abbey in the Dragonspine Mountains, offering the last of the undead shelter from fortune hunters, novelty seekers, and ghouls. Jehan the demon hunter found himself at a loose end, so he opened a museum of demonic artifacts. He made a fortune. With Lucien in power, Sahala took the elves away from the world. They grew strong once more amidst the trees of the regrown home forest. Some say her plans for revenge will bring about the end of days. Some say only Tova, her mother, holds her back. Lucien returned as divine, united the races, and became Lord Emperor of all Rivellon. Only Dallis knew that he was entirely powerless. Dallis and you. The Eternal, now known as Dallis, was a secret advisor to Lucien and to his successors. For eons she would walk in the world, and would outlive the peoples and all, and wander alone amongst the dying stars. With a small band of elves, Ifan ben Mesd replanted the lost elven forests. After the first fresh shoots broke the earth, he disappeared, and was never seen again. Some say Afrit, his soul wolf, walks the forests still. The Red Prince came home a hero. With Sada, he had more dragons. Soon, Prince became Emperor, one who would not use his dragons for conquest. His realm knew peace, and the world did not burn. And then, there was you. You returned to the world as one more human among many. Your future was yours to decide. Did you accept your new status with humility, or did you rebel? Only you know the truth. Only you know if you atone for your sins.